Hello, I hope you all are doing well. As usual, there is so much that's in my head, but we will see where this goes. The first thing I want to talk about, or that's coming up actually, is divine masculine energy. And what I want to say about that, though, is that what's happening is we're starting to see and know and understand divine masculine outside of the way we've kind of been labeling it, right? Which is to say that, oh, it's the other side to divine feminine energy. Oh, it's the counterpart energy. Oh, it's this as far as human arrangement, right? Divine masculine is a specific arrangement of energy that is in all things energy, right? Everything is made of energy. Everything works according to specific structures. And so we have to release out of this idea of divine masculine being masculine. That's not what this is at all. And so what's happening right now is, yes, divine masculine energy, the distortion is coming out of the fields, but it's not just this counterpart other person that we have been identifying, especially if we are twin flames, right? That's occurring. And what I have heard a lot of people saying over the last couple of weeks is like, there's so much chaos. There's chaos in my life. There's chaos at work. There's chaos at home. All of these things. And why that is really going on is because this distortion is being pulled up, not just out of the person, not just out of ourselves, but out of all of these organizational energies, out of all of these structures, because there is a structure to everything in life. Everything in life is made out of structures of energy, which involve both divine feminine and divine masculine energy. So to think that this is just affecting a person is a little bit misleading. So, but the other wonderful thing about it is that we're moving into this light processing through the body itself, which means that we don't necessarily have to, as this chaos is coming up, right, or we're feeling a little bit unstable, or feeling like, I don't know what is happening, we're beyond this place now where we have to say, okay, it's this is happening here, this energy is coming in, this specific whatever is affecting whatever over here in this quadrant kind of thing. We really are able to release from that as long as we know where our center is, as long as we're tuned into ourselves and we are within that alignment. And let's say we know that signature, we know to come back to this signature of ourselves, we will always be okay. The problem is when we don't even know who we are, what we feel like, all these kinds of things. And we can come back to that. But the beauty of this time right now is that the body is upgrading so intensely and immensely that really what happens is, we're told to stay out of the mind, right? Drop into the heart, breathe into the heart, to breathe into this light that's coming into the heart space. And this is very true, because if you try to go into the mind and you try to process what's happening, you're going to get caught every time, because the mind wants to understand in terms of linear letters and words and technicalities that we can fit into this arrangement of boxes that will make sense as we read it out, right? But that's not the way energy necessarily works, especially when it's coming in and it's all getting kind of rearranged and reordered and torn up and new foundations are being laid. We're not going to understand it at the mental level, so we're really going to get struck there. So we have to come into this heart space. But the beauty about the heart space now, because our cells, our DNA, our skin, like every part of our being is coming into this alignment, we can simply sit here and say, oh my gosh, at least this is the way I've been experiencing it, right, is to say, yeah, this isn't right. Okay, I know this isn't right. And it's almost saying, because we have these teams of energies, right? We're not alone in this journey. And it's saying to this greater portion of our field that we are connected to, is like, this isn't right. We need to bring in some kind of adjustment here, or bring it into my awareness what I need to know about this. But we can stay within the stability. We don't have to freak out anymore about these things that are happening. And we will find that the answers do come. They don't come in the mind. They don't come as this human conscious understanding, but we feel it, right? We feel it through the heart. We feel centered. We feel safe. We feel grounded. When we breathe in, there is this feeling that comes over us. You can almost feel this light expanding, right? That says, okay, I don't have the details, but I know everything is going to be okay. And I will figure it out, and what I need to know will be brought to me. And if I don't have the answers, I know where to go looking. There isn't this crazy frenetic energy that is jostling around. Although there also is, though, right? Because all this stuff is coming out. And yet we can return to the center space. But it's our bodies are really supporting this process right now, which is so amazing, because before it always felt like we had to go and we had to reach from the ethers and we had to bring it in. And now it's simply here. And as we're thinking through it, or attempting to think, right, like something is off, okay, come into the heart, it's anchoring in to the body directly. And there is not this, I need to go outward, because every time we go outward and we go looking, we get hit over and over and over again. And really, this is the lesson that's coming in for so many of us. Our energy fields, right, aren't putting up with this bullshit anymore of going out there to be defined. We define ourselves through our own light, through who we are, and we define it by these outer energies coming to us, and we say, is this a match? Does this resonate? Does this make sense? Which is such a more, I will say, easy and elegant way of processing through the light. And this even allows us to drop all these other labels and all these other ways of thinking, because we are union within ourselves. We are this light core of understanding of our own essence signature. So what you will find begins to happen is this. It doesn't matter if there's another person that comes towards you, because you simply can't even allow that within your range. And it's a process, right? We get hit over and over, and then we finally say, and this is how we build our strength and build our light field, because we have these experiences. So to even say, oh, I failed again, or I let this happen again, or how many times am I going to need to learn this lesson? Well, that's you learning the lesson and building up your light at the same time, right? It's like, how much are you willing to put up with and willing to go through? Well, some of us need to go through more than others. So it's not up to anyone to say, okay, don't do that anymore. Like, that's going to, whatever. You will learn. Your energy field is going to show you. And yet my point is that it's a really, really beautiful process when it starts to, it's this self-perpetuating, right? And usually we say that in a negative sense, but this self-perpetuating light, which says, yeah, I know that just doesn't work anymore. And so I'm going to come in here. And it's this internal process that starts, it's like, I don't even know if that's an actual thing, right? But for a long time, it was this idea of cold fusion, like it runs on itself. It's a self-perpetuating process. But essentially, this is what the light field is. Once it knows itself, right? That is the strongest, most powerful statement ever, I believe, is know thyself. And nothing else matters. There's so much in that little phrase there. Nothing else matters, because you are the matter of your form. And once you know yourself, you understand everything else. I think there is this idea, and especially, unfortunately, this is perpetuated through the twin flame modeling, or this idea of twin flames, that we have to come into union with another, right, in order to do our work. Actually, I feel personally what needs to happen is that we have to separate out from everything else, including any other that we may have identified as being similar to us or just like us as an energy signature. And we have to do that in order to separate out, right? I mean, this is all we've been talking about, is how much distortion there is, how much distortion we have taken in, how much of this past life experience we have held on to, thinking and identifying that this is who we are. And yet those were just experiences to learn who we truly are. And so it's really about separating out from everything else but ourselves. And once we truly know who we are, once we truly understand the core of this energy that has filtered out everything else, then we come to know everything else is the one, is the same as us. But we can't do that within, I know there's this idea of like, oh, we have to come together as a community and we have to help heal the world. And I do believe, coming together within community, yes, is very powerful. But until that single cell or that single self knows itself, community is going to be complete chaos, because there's going to be this enmeshment where people just don't know where they start and the other one ends as a singularity. Because as you birth this singular light form, this what we would call self-union, right? That is such a solid structure of being. Nothing can knock that over. And people will come in and they will say, well, it's like this. This is the way the light works. And you will say, well, that's not how I work, though. I work this way. And yet, Both are valid, right? But until you know yourself as this, you're not going to be able to see, understand, accept, know any of that outside of yourself. So how are you going to come into communion with others unless you first know yourself? So know thyself, and nothing else matters, yet everything else becomes part of your matter state through this knowing of the self. So yes, always paradoxes all over the place. Okay, so I hope that made sense. I think I covered a lot of what I wanted to say in just a few short minutes. But yes, this body processing that is occurring now is really amazing. And I would just say, because for myself, what I'm finding is it's really good to go into these kind of, I use like these hypnotic states, right? Kind of this transference plane where we just drop out of the mind completely and we just allow this flow to come in. And whatever it is that is coming up for you is what is coming up for you. So to say that, well, it's not what someone else is seeing or it's not what someone else is hearing, it may or may not be the truth, but to try and align to a different understanding or a different way of working with energy can be so destructive to our own process and to our own fields. And I think that unfortunately there's a lot of what I would call, what I've been seeing as these narcissistic healing templates. And I think they're even more, we talk about, the twins being these narcissists, right? And these codependent templates fighting with one another. And yet what I'm really finding is that it's much, much deeper than that in these light fields. And really they're like these light field matrices, which are just embedded in everything that we are trying to move through and get through. And they're telling us that, the problem is that it's presenting as one way. It's like this front, right? And I think the problem is that we can talk about shadow work and how difficult it is, and people don't want to do their own shadow work. And yet this self-deception, right, is a part of that. And it's really like, if people are deceiving themselves, how do they even know they're deceiving other people? And it can be very, very tricky. And this is why it's so important to know yourself first. Although when we start this journey, right, we're like, well, I don't know myself. Oh my God, I've been struggling all my life to figure out why I'm struggling, So it can be a bit of a catch-22. And yet I will just say that, having come to the end of so many journeys and so many stories time after time, right, and just realizing it's all part of one big journey and one big story, we do intuitively know our own truth. We just believe that we don't. And so we come into contact with others who will prove this to us over and over. So it's never to say that, I think my experience was working with so many healers that I put my trust in, I put my faith in, because of course they said things that I had never heard before. And there was an air about them that made me believe that they knew more than I did. And I think what it really is that others know how to express more than we do. Others know how to put it a certain way that maybe we aren't able to verbalize, or maybe we aren't able to write, or maybe we aren't able to kind of paint this picture for ourselves yet because we haven't quite found our voice or our way of expressing. And then we look to others and think, oh my God, well, they have it figured out. Well, how did they do that? I need to do that as well. And unfortunately, a lot of us as healers do a great disservice to people who are still on their path and on their journey of discovering their own personal expression. I think this is much, much more insidious than I had thought. And what I really love about doing the hypnosis sessions is that it puts you in your own space to be able to experience the energies. Yes, I'm saying it's looking like this to me, and this is what I'm describing it as, but at the same time, you're also feeling it. You are embodying it through your own space and your own energy. And so this doesn't disqualify anything that you are seeing, feeling, experiencing, and knowing as your truth. And yet, it is a bit of a mess out there. So I feel like what is so important, what I have found, what I have realized is that this is a journey of embodying our light. And I think I've said this before in many different ways, many different videos, many different times, but this is truly what we are here to do. It's not about, again, going up to some mountaintop and connecting with our energy and then, being out there in the ethers all the time. But it's even more than just saying, okay, we're anchoring the light in our body. This is really, I would always hear this thing, right? Like, do you walk the talk, or whatever the expression is? It's like, or do they just talk the talk? Like, and that's what I think a lot of people do. And for a long time, I felt like, gosh, okay, so my energy field is doing this. That's great. But like, my life is a huge mess. And this really sucks. Like, I feel like a fraud, because if you were to come into my home, this chaos that was around me, right? Even though, yes, I felt more stable internally, it wasn't manifesting out into the physical realms. And we can say, well, that's a product of, okay, whatever, you're not manifesting properly, or you're not taking enough action, or these active things you need to do in order to actually shift the physical life. But it's more than that, because for a very long time, and I was talking about these divine masculine energies, right, which are so distorted, and all these systems and things are shifting. What has really been blocked is our ability to truly embody this light as ourselves. It's been having to come through these other fields, these other arrangements. And so we're saying, oh yeah, that resonates, that makes sense to me. But then we're also like, but I don't get it. And it's like, again, that math problem where it makes sense when someone does it on the board, right? And you're taking notes along and you're like, yeah, I got it. But then you're given a problem and you're like, oh, I cannot do this. I can't replicate this. I cannot get this answer to match. Why is that? Because, and this is again why I love the hypnosis, because you truly do embody this into and through your form. The energy literally comes in for you to experience it, rather than having someone else talking at you and telling you what they see through their own experience or their own energy field to you. It's much more powerful for you to feel. This is why I love the meditations. This is why I love doing that kind of work, because it makes sense and it truly does work. And some of my most powerful, potent experiences have been through this kind of hypnosis, meditative state. That's how we truly come to know who we are. And how do we really get this into the body? Life is an experiential journey. Ascension is an experiential journey, which means we have to physically, actively do things. And when it comes to light, it's like, well, it's so out there. It's like, how do we make this a physical experience? How do we embody that? Something that is so intangible. And this is how we do it, right? We go into these states where we allow this flow to come into us, where we experience it through our feelings, our thoughts, and our emotions, our own feelings, thoughts, and emotions, not someone else's interpretations, not coming through someone else's mouth, right? Oftentimes we do need, because we will get to these stages where we do need help. Our field may not be properly aligned or coded to where we need to get, right? And so we do need help from people to get through. But ultimately, the bulk of the work comes through us, through our own energy fields. And this is something that we really need to start to embrace, right? This idea that, like, it is here, I can do this, and I don't need some secret manuscript to tell me how to do this. It is a practice. It is an art form. And this is self-mastery, right? It's not about always being in perfect alignment and not making mistakes. And I think that's what a lot of people like to portray. It's like, okay, when you are in alignment, like, it will be like this. No, the truth of it is that when you are in alignment, you always return back to center to say, okay, what is this now? And yes, as we become stronger, as we have more experiences, as we filter out more and more of the garbage, we do start to appear as these very graceful beings, right? Who are, always appear, right, to be in this state of knowing and grace and ease. And yet, I think a big mistake a lot of people make, I think a big mistake that us as individuals fall prey to when we go looking for people to assist us and to help us heal, right, is that a lot of these people like to portray that they do have it all figured out, and yet underneath they do not. And so, I used to be embarrassed about the videos that I would post because my hair was all messy and I had, I was trying to like paint and trying to do things and shuttling kids around because our life was just a complete disaster. And yet I felt like I have to get energy out. I have to express things. I have to put this out there, right? And so there was a lot of embarrassment and shame for me in that, because I felt like, well, what is this really showing people? What is this? Like, I don't have my shit together. How can I even be speaking on these things? And yet I think the greatest disservice that we do to ourselves and that we as ourselves do to other people is to pretend that, it all has to look good on the outside, and that's what it means. Like, this expression of the outer world is a reflection of your inner world. Well, that's not necessarily true. It is true, but also if we are more concerned with expressing our outer world as being, all together and having it, that's when we are ignoring things that are going on inside of us. Because that simple fact that expressing something other than what's really internal says to me that, wow, there's a lot that is being bypassed. There's a lot that is going unseen there. And that's probably the worst mistake that we can make. And I think it's much better, at least for myself personally, I have found it's much better to just continually say, you know what, I'm not happy with this. This isn't right. This isn't right. And people will say, well, stop being unhappy. Just keep moving forward. And yes, there is this, we don't need to be unhappy and constantly looking for the negative. But yet, if we just say, oh, this is all perfect on the outside, I'm only going to write things that sound like I know what I'm talking about. I'm only going to put out videos that look all perfect and polished and make it sound like I am an authority. That's really, that's a red flag to me at this point. So I think I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think that should do it for today. So again, I hope you all are doing so well, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk soon. Take good care.